In a world of aimlessness and a yearning for meaning, many people today are becoming attracted to the practice of philosophy. Now, in order to engage with philosophy, many people have flocked to videos and podcasts and other, let's call them shortcuts. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with philosophy content like this. I mean, hell, I'd kind of be a hypocrite if I made an argument otherwise. But by doing this and not engaging with primary texts, you miss out on the practice of philosophy. You miss out on the grappling and the wrestling with different ideas, the growth in understanding ancient writing, and the face-to-face engagement with different philosophers. Well, face-to-face as much as practically possible. I mean, you aren't necessarily digging up David Hume's corpse to argue with him. But going from the world of videos to the actual text may be kind of intimidating. I mean, what if you misinterpret something? How can you be sure that this is the objective meaning of a text without some idiot like me telling you? That's just one problem. And also, you may have time to watch a 15-minute video explaining Kant's epistemology, but who the hell, in this day and age, has the time to read the Critique of Pure Reason when you're forming your own critique of quitting your job because you have no more free time? Well, there's a specific philosophical text that I think is absolutely perfect in addressing all these concerns and more. And that text is Heraclitus' Fragments. Now, the work isn't called Fragments, it's just a collection of fragments of his greater work, On Nature, which has been lost to time, so this is all we got. Now, although it sucks that Heraclitus wrote all this stuff and only fragments survived, there are some hidden benefits to this. Number one, it's obviously much shorter. I mean, you could realistically knock this thing out in 30 minutes. There are roughly over 120 fragmented verses, and these fragments can be between a very short paragraph to just one sentence. I will say that while it'll take you a brief amount of time to actually read the thing, thinking about it and mulling over it is going to take much longer. The other benefit is this, that because we only have fragments of On Nature, Heraclitus is highly interpretable. Now, this is not to espouse some everything goes theory of interpretation, but many people throughout history are quite divided as to how we should interpret some of these fragments, meaning that your own interpretation may hold some more validity as opposed to a more recent philosopher with widely available sources. Still, it's obviously a good idea to check out how other people have interpreted him after you yourself read the text and come to your own conclusions. Another benefit of starting with Heraclitus' Fragments is that Heraclitus is a pre-Socratic philosopher. He's one of the first in the Western history of philosophy, so you won't need any referential knowledge, you could just dive right in. Speaking of diving right in, I do want to go over a couple ideas from these fragments that are pretty popular, just to get you a little hyped for jumping in yourself. A little philosophical pre-workout, so to speak. Probably the most famous thing Heraclitus is known for is his famous river quotes. This pops up in two different fragments, number 12 and 49. You cannot step into the same rivers, for fresh waters are ever flowing in upon you. At first, this may sound a bit weird. After all, if I take a step into the Rio Grande on a Tuesday, then step into it on a Wednesday, am I not just stepping into the same river twice? Well, a theme throughout Heraclitus' work is the nature of change. Change can be found in everything, and just because we call the Rio Grande one name, different water molecules are passing through you each time you step into the river, meaning that it's not exactly the same river. Sure, we give it a name and think of it as one thing for convenience's sake, but it's constantly changing through the fresh waters, to use this term. So we can't ever step into the same river twice. In addition to this, we aren't the same person when we step into the river again. As highlighted in fragment 49, we step and do not step into the same rivers. We are and are not. So let's go back to our Rio Grande example, where we go for a dip on a Tuesday, then go back on Wednesday, which I would not advise because I heard it's a very sus river. Anyway, getting back on topic. Are you the same person one day and then the next? On the one hand, yes, you're a continuation of the entity known as whatever your name is. But on the other hand, we're different. We've aged slightly. We've experienced new things. And although these new experiences can be very subtle, it nonetheless changes us. Using an overt example, what if you went to the Rio Grande Tuesday, drove home and got into a car accident on the way back, then went back Wednesday? That accident might have scarred you mentally and physically, essentially making you a new person. All of this to say, we do not step into the same river twice, because the river is constantly changing, and so are we. Now, another interesting theme you'll come across when reading Heraclitus is that of fire. Many of these pre-Socratic philosophers were very interested in understanding what the nature is of everything. And because of this, many scholars throughout history believe that Heraclitus is saying that fire is behind it all. And they do have some fragments to back them up. This world, which is the same for all, no one of gods or men has made. But it was ever, is now, and ever shall be an ever-living fire, with measure of it kindling and measure of going out. Now, it's undeniable fire is an important concept for Heraclitus. But the question for you as you're reading the fragments is asking yourself what exactly Heraclitus means by fire. Is it literal? Is there a flame within everything? Or is it more symbolic? After all, this talk of kindling and going out seems to imply some sort of ever-existent change or flux, and that would go along with his river fragments. This also may go along with fragment number 65. Fire is want and surfeit. But then, we get fragments like fragment 76, which seems to explain fire not simply as a placeholder for change, but as a specific factor or step in the natural order. Fire lives the death of air, and air lives the death of fire. Water lives the death of earth, earth that of water. So if you decide to read the fragments, which the entire point of this video is hopefully to inspire you to do, come back to this video and share your thoughts on what you think Heraclitus means by fire. It'll be fun to bounce different interpretations off one another, and it'll shamelessly add to my view count. One last aspect of Heraclitus' fragments that I want to talk about is relativism. This idea that things aren't objectively this way or that, but are beholden to the perspectives at which they're seen or compared to. The funniest example of this is when he's talking about monkeys. The wisest man is an ape compared to God, just as the most beautiful ape is ugly compared to man. A lot of his fragments that deal with the issue of relativity do involve animals, so I wonder if you'll consider these to be strong arguments or too reliant upon different species to really say anything strong about the matter. In other words, it's up to you to decide if Heraclitus is monkeying around. So hopefully with these points in my intro, you see the value in choosing Heraclitus as your jumping in point for philosophy. There will be a lot of great opportunities for interpretation and critical thinking, and it'll be a low commitment kind of thing, as opposed to the serious relationship leading to marriage reading experience with someone like Kant. Subscribe, like, and hit the bell if you enjoyed this video, and with that I wish you all a beautiful rest of your day.